Once again, welcome to this sixth and final integration webinar. We're going to be looking today at Group 6 subjects, so that's the arts. I'm going to be talking at you as if you are not necessarily TOK teachers. This would be great if we have some people out there who just teach visual arts or film or dance or theatre, whatever it is. Perhaps you're not watching now live, but the idea is that the video can be passed on to teachers in other subjects to give them an idea of how to draw on TOK when you are teaching Group C subjects, and vice versa, how to draw on some knowledge that we might find from those subjects when we deliver TOK lessons or when we're constructing our course. So I'm gonna start by just giving a very brief outline of what TOK is, a little background for people who might not be familiar with the subject. Then I'm going to talk a little bit more about what we mean by integration. What is it? Why is it important? And why is it a problem? Why is it difficult to achieve integration? Then I'm going to try and give you some specific ways to integrate Group 6. I mean, it's all very well talking about integration in general terms and why we should do it, but I want you to leave this webinar with some concrete examples of how to do it. So I'm going to begin by talking about the 12 key TOK concepts, which is a new addition to the course for the 2022 syllabus. I'm going to run through some of the kind of key thinkers that work in both TOK and art subjects. And I'm going to look at what we call real life situations. That is to say, events and issues going on in the world that we might draw on again to bridge that gap between TOK and the art subjects. I'd like to also talk about how we frame our discussions in TOK. As I will say, any kind of discussion is great. We want students to be able to offer their opinions. We want to give them feedback on that. We want to get discussions going between class members. But we do have a specific way of articulating our ideas in TOK and exploring ideas, which I will talk about. I will very briefly outline the kind of support that we give for the TOK course and for integrating the diploma program in general via the site, and also via school visits, which obviously we're not doing very much of at the moment, but we do also offer online workshops and seminars for teachers and for students. And then finally, just a very brief outline of how you can join us if you're not already a member of the site. I'd also like to give you a sneak peek and a little update on the new TOK site, which will be launching very, very soon, early next week, if not by the end of this week. So we're quite excited about the relaunch of the site, theoryofknowledge.net 2.0. So we're quite excited about getting that out and introducing it to you. Okay, so just a quick outline of the format that this will take. The webinar should last about an hour. I expect I'll be talking for about 45 minutes. That will leave a little bit of time at the end for questions, although I would say that people generally prefer to email in their questions, and I can then respond to them when I send out the debrief email, which includes a link to the video recording, which might be what you're watching right now, and our responses to the FAQs from both this webinar and the other integration webinars that we've done. So I am Michael Dunn. I am the founder, the creator, the head of theoryofknowledge.net, which I set up about 10 years ago. It's grown in that time to become quite a large website now, which is used by a huge proportion of the DP schools around the world. We've got members at about 1,000 different schools, and we release a newsletter every month, which we send out to around 10,000 people. So we deal with a lot of people around the world, a lot of schools around the world, a lot of students around the world, and we enjoy giving them our support. So just to recap about the questions, if you want to send in messages, questions at the end of this session, you can do so either on the Q&A or on the chat, or you can just hang on to your questions and send them by email, and I'm happy to respond to them both ways. Excuse me. Okay, so just a very quick background, a little outline of what TOK is. It's a course which is sometimes referred to as the IB Diploma's flagship course. I like to call it that anyway, but then I'm a TOK teacher. It's a course that should last around 100 hours during the 2 years of the DP. And it asks students to consider where we source our knowledge, how we produce knowledge, what we do with it, how it changes over time, anything to do with the way in which we understand the world. I'll talk more on that a little bit later when we talk about how we frame our discussions. Unlike other DP courses, the ordinary subjects, the 6 subjects, we do not have an exam. We are assessed in TOK via an essay, which makes up 2/3 of the final mark, and an exhibition now, which is 1/3 of the final mark. The purpose of TOK, one of the main purposes, which is the reason for these integration webinars, is that TOK is also supposed to function as the hub of the DP, the thing that brings all the different programs, the different courses together, and encourage students to think critically about their DP courses, to sort of meta think, if you like, about the sources of the knowledge that they are using in each of the courses. That, to me, means that TOK aligns very, very well with what we hear a lot about, which are the 4 C's of education. These are the 4 skills, I suppose, the 4 purposes of a good education for children that have been identified by business leaders, educational leaders, politicians, big cheeses in general. These are the things that we should be training our students to have when they leave school and university: critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. And I think that the TOK course does this better than any other course within the DP, and indeed any other educational program. So as much as possible, I try to refer to the 4 C's. One of the earliest lessons that I teach with my students is about the 4 C's and how they are at the heart of what we do in TOK, how they are really the aims of TOK. So again, I'll refer back to that as we go along. Okay, so the course itself, excuse me, the course itself looks like this. In the middle, you'll see us, essentially, knowers, which is referred to as the core theme of TOK, knowledge and the knower, which looks really at how we process our understanding of the world, our knowledge of the world, on a kind of personal level. But that sort of interlinks out to both the optional themes, which are our affiliations, if you like, the way in which we view the world via our language, via politics, religion, technology, the extent to which we belong perhaps to an indigenous society, or the extent to which we are removed from indigenous societies. And then you have above the areas of knowledge, which are the ways in which we categorize our ideas and concepts about the world. So you can see them for yourself there. And obviously, the top one is of interest in this integration webinar because it is the arts. This is one of our areas of knowledge. So this is a very, very important part of TOK. During the course, students are expected to develop a knowledge of 2 of the optional themes, and they are expected to look at all of the areas of knowledge. So every student doing TOK will be looking at some point at the arts. So it's a crucial part of the course. Okay, so integration, we talk a lot about integrating the DP, making all of the different strands of the DP interlink, teachers communicating with each other, sharing their ideas, sharing their schemes of work, sharing their forms of assessment, which is as it should be. And I think this happens a lot in schools around the world, certainly schools that I've worked with. But TOK is this sort of mystery subject, which everyone should be involved with, but sometimes perhaps are a little bit reluctant to get involved with because they often have misapprehensions about what TOK is, which I think sometimes means that it's not drawn on to the extent that it should be. Even where it is understood and it is kind of embraced, there are still sort of practical questions like, You know, who should lead integration? Should it be TOK coordinators? Should it be ordinary DP teachers? Should it be the DP coordinator overall? I mean, I think the answer to that, of course, is that, you know, we should all be working together. But I think that the problem is often that the way TOK is delivered and taught means that it is quite it's quite exclusive. It cuts out a lot of teachers during the course of the program. And if I can just refer back to the diagram, in a lot of schools, for example, we might look at the arts for 3 or 4 weeks. We might then move on to history for 3 or 4 weeks. We might then move on to mathematics, etc., or look at language. Now, during that time, a lot of the vast majority, in fact, of teachers within a school will be unable to participate in what's going on. How do I, for example, as a mathematics teacher, get involved in discussions on the arts? How do I, as a sports science teacher, offer anything to the history section? Now, you know, you can make links between everything, but it's a lot of effort. We don't have time to do that. So I developed a different way of delivering a course via questions rather than via elements of the TOK course. So I divide up the course into 6 big questions. Now, you know, I use my questions, but there's no reason why you as a school could not sort of ask different questions within TOK. And those questions are ones that every DP teacher can answer, every DP teacher can have an opinion on, and every DP teacher can support the students to understand. I call these the 6 big questions, and they look like this. So these are kind of the original big questions. These are the ones that we look at in TOK. So we ask these questions and explore them via a combination of the themes and the areas of knowledge. So during the course of the 2 years, we look at all of the themes, and we look at all of the areas of knowledge, and we consider how we as knowers develop and become expert thinkers, nuanced thinkers. Okay, so just to pick one out at random, you know, perspectives. How do our perspectives and biases shape our knowledge of the world? Every DP teacher can offer their opinion on that. You know, be you an arts teacher, a visual arts teacher, or a dance teacher, or a film teacher, or a teacher from one of the other groups. You can give your opinion on how our perspectives and our biases shape the way we interact with our subject. Everyone can offer an opinion on big question number 5. How is new knowledge about the world created? How is it created in the arts? How is it created in biology? How is it created in chemistry? And so on. Now, these 6 big questions, these original big questions, we can sort of translate and put into the context of all of the DP subjects. So here, this is how they would look for visual arts. Very, very simple to just transfer those questions into the context of visual arts. So big question number 2, which is one I find very interesting in connection with the arts: how does our knowledge about the world inform the way we construct our values? Becomes, how does our knowledge about visual arts inform the way we construct our values? So what is the relationship between our understanding of the arts, our interaction with the arts, and ethics, our moral positions? Do the arts help us, or do the arts hinder us sometimes from understanding moral issues? Something which, again, I'll talk about a little bit later. So that's how the structure that I use for TOK helps integration and allows other teachers to get involved much more than the traditional way of teaching the course. So, you know, I just to reiterate why I think it's important to offer this integration, to draw on TOK, to have this kind of mutual relationship going. I think that TOK really allows Group 6 teachers and all DP teachers to enrich their students' understanding of, I shouldn't say mathematics, I should say the arts, visual arts, whatever it is. Any subject. It allows a deeper understanding of any subjects. It allows you to get great discussions going in your classroom. It allows you to tap into the 4 C's, you know, critical thinking. We can clearly see how TOK relates to that, thinking about the source and the validity of knowledge and ideas that you look at. Communicating your ideas, of course, massively important. No good having the ideas if you can't communicate them and express them. creativity, how ideas, well, understanding how ideas change over time, also understanding that there are many different ways of producing knowledge and understanding, and working together, not just sort of on group projects, which I think is an important part of learning, but also understanding that there are other points of view, other perspectives, other ways of interacting with the world, interacting with the arts. Okay, so all of those four C's, I think we draw on hugely in TOK, which you can then draw on in your visual arts, your arts course, be it visual arts or film or whatever. Okay, so that's all lovely. We've, I hope, established to some degree that it's important to integrate the DP and why it's important, how we can possibly do it, but we need a little more sort of practical understanding of how this might work. And I want to give you some more concrete examples of how this works. So we'll start with what has been introduced for the new TOK syllabus. So there's a new TOK syllabus that has started this summer. Schools in the Northern Hemisphere have just started teaching it. Schools in the Southern Hemisphere will start teaching it in February or March, depending on when they start their school year. And when I first saw these 12 concepts, I wondered really what the kind of purpose of them was. And then it occurred to me that you know, not only do they give a great understanding of knowledge for TOK students within TOK classes, they are a fantastic scaffold for integrating TOK with other subjects, because again, like our big questions, every teacher can have an opinion on these different concepts, and they play a different kind of role in the different DP subjects. Okay, so you can see for yourself what the 12 TOK concepts are. Now again, how might that work in practice in your course? Well, here's some quotes from some thinkers. I'll just move my head over there. I hope that sort of gets me out of the way, and you can read all those quotes. So here are 6 quotes that relate to half of the 12 big questions. We start with dance. I think that that idea by Martha Graham is something that relates to interpretation. Dance is the hidden language of the soul of the body. I love this from Robert Rauschenberg. The artist's job is to be a witness to his time in history. So there's a responsibility to creating artistic knowledge. Values. This is a fantastic quote from D.H. Lawrence, which we actually draw on and look at in a couple of lessons that we do in that theory of knowledge.net. The essential function of art is moral, but a passionate implicit morality, not didactic, and morality which changes the blood rather than the mind. Again, that's a great quote to begin a conversation with students about the relationship between art and morality. The role that art plays in informing us about moral issues and ethics, you know, something that I'll come back to because I find that quite interesting. Oscar Wilde's very famous quote there, I think, relates to truth. Life imitates art far more than art imitates life. You know, a great one to discuss, and I'm sure a lot of people do at least a single lesson on what Oscar Wilde thought about art. Explanation, I like this, which relates to film. The director is the only person who knows what the film is about. So in other words, everyone who watches a film, or this is what David Lynch sort of goes on to say, everyone that watches a film sort of puts their own meaning into it, because it's only the director who knows what the film is about. Is that true? Do you agree with that? Do students agree with that? And as David Lynch says, every viewer is going to get a different thing. That's the thing about painting, photography, and cinema. He's obviously a director, so perhaps linking that most of all to cinema, but he thinks that is also the case in painting and photography. So again, is art completely subjective, or is there a meaning to be discovered in every work of art, every piece of music, every film? I think those are some great discussions that you can have with your students, and that's the kind of thing that will help you understand, or help your students understand, the 12 concepts of TOK, and very nicely bridge the gap between your subject in Group 6 and TOK. Okay, so those are some concrete examples. Now we also look at, I'm going to move me again, let's just move my head up to the other side of the page, there we go. We look at a lot of key thinkers. There are a lot of sort of TOK heroes You know, people such as George Orwell and you know, philosophers such as Kant and you know, a lot of big thinkers out there that you would expect, Plato and Socrates and so on, not just philosophers, but writers, artists, scientists, and so on. So there's a lot of them embedded in the course, but I'm sure a lot of them embedded in your group 6 subjects. I try to choose key thinkers as well who are accessible to students and who have framed their ideas in a way that can be easily viewed and understood. So here are some quite modern thinkers that students can draw on. These are all taken from TED, which we use a lot in TOK. It's almost like a purpose-built resource for us in TOK. It's absolutely fantastic. So I begin with Elif Shafak, who's a Turkish writer, absolutely fantastic writer. And she talks not just about literature and writing, but about the arts in general, and how the arts allow us to she calls it punching through mental walls. She does that via her own writing and and fiction. But I think the same can be said for music, the same can be said for fine art, dance, theatre. All of those different subjects, I think, help us to overcome the fact that we all have different perspectives and we all see the world in a different way, but perhaps we share this one thing, which is the arts. JR is a French street artist who has created some of the most extraordinary works of art you will ever see. This talk is so cool. He's absolutely amazing. He's decorated entire hillsides of houses, you know, not just, you know, little walls. He has decorated entire kind of districts of normally sort of poorer parts of town in Africa and in Latin America, brightened up sort of these barrios and completely changed the lives of people who live there and changed the way they view the world. So, you know, his talk here shows one of the purposes of art and the impact that it can have on people's lives and the way in which it can empower them. So I think that's an absolutely brilliant talk that students would love to see. Janet Eckelman takes imagination quite seriously, as I've said there, and kind of accepts it wherever it comes from. So wherever her inspiration comes from, she sort of seizes on that and creates something from it. So this is a really interesting talk to help your students to understand how we create knowledge in the arts, how we draw on imagination in order to create amazing art. Evelyn Glennie is deaf and a musician, which makes her very interesting. And her talk is all about how to listen and how to hear music. And I won't say too much more than that. It's an amazing talk. She is an amazing person. And I think challenges a lot of the assumptions that we have, not just about music, but the arts in general. And finally, Michael Tilson Thomas, who's a composer and a conductor and an all-round genius when it comes to music, talks about how music has developed over time. But what I think is interesting about that talk is that it links very much to our emotions and our feelings and how music and emotions have developed alongside each other. So that's a really nice talk as well. So those are some key thinkers who might work quite well in the arts and also in TOK. I'm sure you have a lot more, and it's just you know, another way of bridging the gap between what we do in TOK and what Group 6 subject teachers do. Okay, so a lot of people think that TOK is very sort of abstract, very esoteric, very mysterious. A lot of people say or think that it's like philosophy, which it isn't. I mean, we draw on philosophers, we refer to ideas that you would find in philosophy, but it is not philosophy. It is practical at its heart. And personally, I studied philosophy at university, and one of the things that I found quite frustrating was that the examples and the evidence you use to support and justify ideas is often hypothetical. And you sometimes have these rather far-fetched hypothetical situations. Even when they're not far-fetched, they're not real. They are made up, and you can make up a hypothetical situation to support almost any idea or opinion. So in TOK, we don't do that. We avoid that. we justify our ideas, we support our claims by referring to real life situations. And these can be big news events going on in the world. Right now, my TV on the other side of the room is giving me updates on the U.S. Presidential election, which obviously is a big event, and I'll offer a real life situation in a minute about that. But they can be on a much more personal level. They can be experiences that students have had within their own life, or a learning experience at school, or it can be a kind of a regional event, perhaps that's going on in the town in which you live, or the country in which you're teaching. So they can be almost anything, a real life situation. Good real life situations are ones that prompt us to ask questions. They prompt us to ask, how we know what we're looking at. And so, to give you a few examples. So we start, actually this podcast, perhaps I should have, I should have put later on in the presentation, but this is a thing I spotted the other day from the Art newspaper, which considers the question about judging art via the moral perspective of the artist. In other words, can a bad artist be, or someone who has sort of questionable moral positions on life, be considered a great artist? Should we bear in mind the ethics and the morality of the artist that we're looking at in order to judge his or her artwork? It's a sort of perennial question. It's one that we've asked, but I find it fascinating, and I think it's something that works really nicely in both TOK and in Group 6 subjects. Now I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a second when I talk about framing our discussion, so I won't say anything more about that. This is a story that I got from The Guardian the other day, an artist called Bruce Nauman, and the themes that his artwork explores. The nice thing about this is the quote here that you see from the article. He says, "The true artist helps the world by revealing mystic truths." Be a great discussion point for your students. What does he mean? First of all, do they agree with him? I think that's a really nice idea. Mystic truths is quite a nice phrase. Banksy is a favorite of mine. He's a favorite of the students that I teach. He's fantastic. The other day, he had created some street art or graffiti, whatever you want to call it, on an underground train, a metro train, train in London, and it was cleaned off. This is the time of COVID, right? So we have cleaners coming in and making sure that everything is hygienic. They saw the artwork, they cleaned it off very quickly. Then it was revealed to be Banksy, so probably worth a lot of money as well. And I think street art is great for posing the question of what is art? Is this street art real art? Is it graffiti? What is it? What makes it good? Banksy not only creates art, he also sets things up for kind of events after he's painted them. So in this case, he must have known that this was going to be cleaned off. Does the process of cleaning become part of the art? What is art? It's great. Banksy is fantastic for stimulating those kind of discussions. An article about the artist Edward Hopper. I've read quite a lot of articles, not just about visual art, but also about literature and about music, sort of predicting the situation that we are in right now. Edward Hopper, his artwork is fantastic for exploring the theme of loneliness. His subject matter is often sort of these big rooms in which people sort of sit on their own, and we kind of look at those right now, as we are sort of in another lockdown in the UK. I'm sure around the world you're locked down as well in certain places, and it's a lonely experience being cut off from other people. So we look at art like that with added sort of engagement. It resonates more with us now, which I think poses the question about our understanding of art and how it changes over time, and how it depends on the context that we are in looking at it. Is this the mark of great art, the way in which it can predict these different things happening in society, and we can constantly reevaluate literature and art and music and so forth. Another one that I'm very interested in is the way in which art, in this case film, um, gives us the truth about the world. In this case, history. Okay, so there are loads and loads of films out there, many of them very, very good. But should we trust them in order to give us the truth about the past? This film, 1917, I thought a great film. It was. I mean, this raises lots of questions. Can we use films like that to understand the past? But also, there's a personal connection in this because the director's grandfather, great grandfather, probably was involved in the First World War. And it's sort of based on his story. So, does that personal connection add to its authority and its authenticity? I think, of course, we've got to be very careful because films like this will exaggerate the truth. They will add things that didn't happen for effect. But on the other hand, they do give us a sense of what it must have been like to be there, and we can't get that through often quite dry textbooks. So they do offer us something that other historical sources don't. So again, a great question to consider with your students. I mean, this would work obviously in history and in the arts and in TOK. So there's a lot there that we can apply. Okay, so what did I mean when I said framing TOK discussions? What kind of discussions do we do in TOK? Well, I want to repeat what I said earlier. Any discussion is great discussion, and this is how we empower our students. This is how we engage our students. I love hearing what they have to say. I learn a lot from them, perhaps more than they learn from me. So there's nothing I like more than listening to my students discuss things, argue things, make claims, make counterclaims. Get a great discussion going in either a TOK classroom, or I used to teach history in my history classrooms, or in this case in classrooms that might be looking at theatre or dance or music or whatever it is. So how do we do it? How do we frame our talk discussions? We try to do it in TOK by asking questions about the world, which we call knowledge questions. Now, you can divide knowledge questions into two types, really. First order knowledge questions, which is directly about the world, which is sort of what you do in ordinary DP subjects. And there are second order knowledge questions, which is how we know. Okay, so if we're looking at visual arts, your first order knowledge question might be, what makes a good painting? What makes a good piece of music? How do we structure a symphony? Things like that. Whereas in TOK, we might ask, who is an authority on saying that? How has that changed over time? Is there actually an answer to the question of, is there good art? So, we ask sort of more questions about, how we know, how we make these claims, okay? So, to put that in context, excuse me again. So one thing, excuse me, that I find very interesting, and it's the thing that I focus on in the arts when I do them in TOK more than anything else, is the relationship between artistic knowledge and art itself and our moral outlooks. Okay, so in other words, the big overall question: to what extent do we draw on the arts, be they films or literature or visual arts, in order to develop our moral compass, our sort of ethical approach to the world? So, the obvious example that I always think of would be Picasso's Guernica. One of the most important protest works of art that's ever been created. We know the event that happened more because of Picasso than for any other reason. He commemorated it in his extraordinary painting. It has an amazing power when you look at it. This clearly is a work of art that is motivated by morality and wanting to shine light on an action that had awful sort of moral consequences. So I often focus on stories like that in order to link art to TOK. So here are a few recent real life situations again, excuse me, that deal with that topic. So the first one from the LA Times, looking at the way in which the LA Museum of the Holocaust is changing its name and devoting itself more to delivering a clearer mission in order, as it says, to fight hatred and intolerance. And you know, this has got a lot to do with arts, because it's about articulating who they are, their identity, their kind of their corporate image, if you like, and how they sort of package the exhibits within their museum. So it's sort of very closely related to the arts. Second story there that I've read in the last few days actually is about a new statue that's just been installed in New York. It's a statue of Medusa with the head of Perseus in her hand. Perseus in Greek mythology raped Medusa. You know, she's one of those characters that we see as sort of a baddie, when in fact she was the person who was treated in a terrible way in the first place. So we've kind of rewritten that story. So this statue has sort of reclaimed that kind of issue. It's very much a part of the Me Too campaign, and its location is outside the courthouse where Harvey Weinstein was put on trial. So this is a great example of protest art. And it poses lots and lots of questions related to the relationship between our moral awareness and art. You know, how much do we learn about about morality from art? I think it's a fantastic piece of work. There's a DW video which is really nice, and it talks about the relationship between arts and the level of freedom that exists in society. Again, maybe a smaller question that it poses there: is art about making society better? Is it all about advancing society, or you know, is art just entertainment? Is it something that is separate from making things better in a way, you know, that gives art sort of pure sort of identity, to just see it as something that stimulates us and engages us and entertains us, but doesn't give us any kind of moral knowledge. So, you know, students can have a really strong position, I think, on this question. Finally, there's a similar story there to the Medusa statue, which actually is mentioned in the Telegraph article as well, about a statue that was put up to replace the slave trader that was recently knocked down during protests in Bristol. So, you know, again, posing that question: how can the arts help us to understand ethical questions? So those are some stories. I mean, I've got loads of stories similar to those that try to relate the arts to ethics and moral questions. So members of the site can access those quite easily. They also come out every month in the newsletter, and we've almost always got a story that looks at how the arts relates to ethics. Okay, so that's the kind of discussion that we like to get going, second order knowledge questions. I'd like to sort of just briefly run over some of the things that we do to support integration within the DP, using TOK as the kind of tool of that. First of all, we've created a huge resource for integration called the DP integration tool, and for every single subject we have a folder with some lovely documents in. They give you a banner, first of all, that you can stick on your wall. The idea is you can delve into TOK to whatever depth you want. Okay, so you can just stick a banner on your wall which gives you the big questions in the context of your subject, and you can leave it there if you don't want to go any further. If you do want to go further, we have a list of quotes for every DP subject, again relating them to the big questions. We have a huge document with media sources for each subject, again, you know, showing you real life situations and podcasts and videos and articles that you can use in your classroom. There are loads and loads of TED Talks that I've linked to. different subjects, and again, the big questions. And I've also got a document there showing the 12, you've seen the one on this presentation, the 12 key concepts of TOK, but for each subject. Okay, so the DP integration tool is a huge resource, but it's very easy to use, and it allows you to delve into TOK to whatever extent you want. So it's quite a useful thing that a lot of people like to use. TOK newsletter. So every month I publish a newsletter which has 20 real life situations on, discussed within podcasts and videos and articles again. I try to make them as diverse as possible in terms of the media sources and where they come from. There are some sources that do tend to dominate, but I try to balance them up with other sources as well from other kind of political perspectives. The newsletter is brilliant for anyone that wants to use what's going on in the world right now to discuss their subject and discuss it in a kind of TOK friendly way. So analyzing the knowledge behind it. And then finally, we've created another huge resource, which is the knowledge lexicon, which right now has about 1,000 terms and ideas listed with, again, an article next to it that students can use to explore that term, that word, which is quite empowering for them. You know, this is one of the great things about education, giving them the language to use to express their ideas, and that's the idea behind the knowledge lexicon. I do like visiting schools. It's not very easy at the moment, but I've visited schools all over the world, in Europe, in South America, in lots of other places that I've been. I've done it online, I've done it in person. In person is quite difficult at the moment, but this is one of the great ways that I like to help schools to instill sort of passion and purpose. Those are the two words that I use, passion and purpose for TOK, amongst teachers who can be TOK teachers or non-TOK teachers, and students as well. You know, one of the big things I do is to explain to students why they're doing this course. You know, why are you in this strange classroom doing this mandatory course that you haven't chosen? Well, here's why. And I try to make it exciting and show them what an amazing experience TOK can be for them. So if you want to get in touch with me about organizing a school visit, I'll be very, very happy to talk to you. So I mean, you'll get this presentation when I send it out, so you can very quickly head over to the site and join us by signing up. You can do it in a few seconds, and one membership is good for an entire school. Every teacher can use it, every student can use it, and there's a load of things on there that work for TOK and also for all the other subjects. There's an entire course for TOK, a 2-year course, as well as so many other resources that you will definitely not have time to use them all. Okay, so it's very reasonable, and you know, we've got about 1,000 members around the world now, which is fantastic. Okay, just a final note there. For members and for non-members as well who use the free parts of the site, because there's a lot of free content on the site as well. We are launching our new website. It's going to look like that on the front page, which is pretty cool. It should be launched at the end of this week or very early next week. We cannot wait to get it out. It's well overdue. I meant to get this out a couple of months ago. It's a huge job to actually get this relaunched. We've been working very, very hard to do it, so we're really excited about relaunching it. I have had a question from someone saying, I'm a member of the site, and do I have to pay for the new site? Of course you don't. You know, you will not really notice it sort of coming along. It will just suddenly be there instead of the old site, which is an interim site. So you know, one day over the next few days, you'll just click on theoryofknowledge.net and you'll get this rather than the old site. So I'm really excited about this. It's faster, it's more intuitive, it's far more beautiful, it's got loads and loads of new content on it. So I'm really, really excited about launching it. Okay, I'm going to stop there. It's 11:45, so I've spoken for about 45 minutes. I'm very, very happy to take any questions that you might have. You can ask them either via the Q&A, or you can go on the chat. I don't mind. So I won't wait for too long because I think people generally prefer to sort of send in questions, but I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have them now. Someone's pointed out that it is uh, much colder in Canada than the UK. Yes, I'm sure it is. Actually, the sun has just come out, so it's looking quite nice here. But if anyone has any questions right now, I'll be happy to take them. Just give you a few minutes to send them my way. As I've said, I will send out a debrief, which includes a link to the video, a link to download the presentation that I'm using here to deliver this to this webinar, and a response to all of the FAQs that I've had, not just in this webinar, but in other ones that I've had. There's quite a few questions that keep getting asked, and I'll try and provide my answers to them. So someone has said how to start with the area of knowledge of the arts. I mean, like I've said, I prefer to structure my course not by saying, right, now we're going to look at the arts. I prefer to structure it around questions that I ask about knowledge. So I look at the arts as I've kind of mentioned here in connection with values. So if you check out big question number 2, which is all about how our knowledge informs us about morality, that's where I look at the arts, and we have a quick think about the nature of the arts, but then we move on to think about how we use it to provide us with knowledge about the world. I also look at the arts again when we study big question 5, which is about creativity, how we create new knowledge. It's really nice to think about how new artistic knowledge is created compared to the natural sciences. How, you know, we always talk about artistic inspiration and how we come up with new ideas about not only what art is, but also how to create art in this sort of imaginative way. And then a lot of scientists have pointed out, well, it's actually very similar in science. You know, it's wrong to see these two areas of knowledge as being very, very different and sometimes even clashing. You begin the artistic process in a very similar way to science. You know, in science, you have an inspirational idea, you use your imagination to come up with your question, your hypothesis, and then you apply, you know, more the scientific method to explore it. But that's quite a nice discussion to have, to think about the similarities rather than differences between the arts and science. So you know, I look at the arts in detail in those two big questions, but at the beginning of every single single big question, 6 big questions, we look at different media sources for all of the areas of knowledge, and I get students looking at one each time, and they talk to each other about, you know, how each area of knowledge relates to the big question. So they think about what art is in the first big question, they think about values, they think about how perspectives can change the way we see art, and so on and so forth. Someone has said, is there a specific discussion method that you use, e.g. Socratic in TOK? Not really. You know, I mean, I plan my lessons very, very carefully and very, very clearly, and that's what you get as a member of the site. You know, my lessons are all presented on on Google presentations, so students know exactly what they're doing. But the discussion points themselves, excuse me, the discussion points themselves, I think, are better run off the cuff quite often, depending on what's going on in the world that day, depending on what your students are like, depending on the time of day. So, you know, I have these big questions as part of, you know, the slides. I'll ask a question, I'll be ready to have a discussion, but it's kind of up to the students as much as you, I think, to drive the discussion forward. Sometimes, to be perfectly honest, they don't feel like talking. You know, maybe it's late in the day, maybe they're tired, maybe they've got exams coming up. On the other hand, you know, I'm lucky. My lessons are normally characterized by a lot of talk, a lot of discussion, so I don't normally have a problem like that. But they do have different sort of days. I mean, I suppose I do Socratic method more than anything else, but it's not sort of deliberate and it's not really planned. Someone has said, I need some more water. Someone has said, it's been observed that only few students are interested in arts. I tried to do some activities with arts by showing Banks's video. I think that's a shame. I mean, I I think you have to make the arts matter to them. I think Banksy is great for that. I think street art is a great subject. Of course, remember, excuse me, God, dear. Remember, when we're talking about the arts, we're not just talking about visual arts. We're talking about music, which should matter to them. We're talking about theatre. We're talking about film. I use film a lot as part of the arts. You know, I consider. I show lots of clips of films, and I consider how film links to history. So to you know, you saw the real life situation about 1917. That's the kind of thing that I would use a lot of. So I suppose part of it is finding an art form that might engage them. I think film could possibly do that. You know, my students all love music, and so I try to draw on that as well. I don't know, it depends on your students, I guess. Okay, I think we're going to wrap it up. Thank you very much for joining me. I will send out the debrief email as soon as I can prepare this video, which should be by the end of today, maybe tomorrow. I am giving another webinar in a couple of weeks, which will be for parents. I want to try and introduce them to TOK. I want to try and persuade them that TOK is just a fantastic part of the educational experience. I think it gives their students, their children, great skills for university and life beyond the classroom. It's a free event. You can sign up for it on the website. I'll also be sort of sending out emails about that and on LinkedIn. And a lot of people said, can we invite parents? Of course, that's the idea. I would love to be talking to parents rather than teachers, and trying to show them how TOK is fantastic, and you know, everyone should do it. So that's what I'll be doing in a couple of weeks' time. So look out for emails and look out for social media posts about that. Thank you very, very much. I'm sorry again for my voice. I seem to be out of practice when it comes to talking to rooms full of people, but it's a real pleasure to talk to you, and I hope you've taken away some things. By all means, get in touch with me, and I will respond to your questions. Thank you very much, and have a good day.